Where are we at in society today? Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Make my day.
Every single week, I put my freaking heart and soul into this. I don't go out there and laugh. It's not funny. It's not fun. Nothing's funny to me. I don't want to go out there and get embarrassed on Monday Night Football in front of everybody.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
So ain't nothing changed from yesterday. Still the same person I was yesterday, and I got the same thing for you that I had yesterday. You know why I'm here.
You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
You know, I was thinking about that Derek Anderson soundbite there where he says, I don't want to be embarrassed on Monday Night Football. That's part of, you know, our intro. It was Derek Anderson. I believe it was when he was with the Cardinals. There was a shot of him smiling a little bit. And so some reporters were asking him that, and he took offense to it. And I thought, I wonder if Jacksonville, like Tennessee before them, was slightly embarrassed yesterday. And you could understand why. Hi, everybody, and welcome on a Monday to X's and Bros across the great state of Michigan. I'm Matt Shepard. Trent Bally is our producer. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. It was, for the most part, a really good one. Disappointing Michigan State over the weekend against Illinois, especially that they gave it such a game effort. But at some point, we got to stop saying that. At some point, we got to stop saying, you know what? Hey, they're better than they were a year ago. It doesn't matter. Okay, who cares? Certain games you expect a team to win, and it's all right to have bigger expectations than what everybody else thought was going to be. All right. We have gotten to the point where it's like, okay, enough of the, well, he's got 61 new players. Well, it's a new coach. It's a new system. It's a freshman quarterback. Stop. Certain teams you're competing against, certain teams you should beat. Now, they're going to win their last two games in all likelihood, but it's games like Saturday that kind of drive me crazy about certain fan bases, whether it be Michigan, Michigan State, Central Michigan. I don't care who it is. You feel like you're satisfied with mediocrity. You feel like you're satisfied because you're in the damn game. Enough. Move on and get to something where you're like, we demand more. And I'll guarantee you the coach demands more. The Lions gave you more than anything you could hope for. I mean, when you score on your first 7 possessions, and every single possession you had, except for the kneel down, the victory formation, enough. You know, just let them. Can we just say they scored on every single possession? Because that's basically what it is. They could have scored on the last one probably. They just chose to say, it's okay, Jacksonville, you can hurry to the bus now. 52-6, all kinds of records that we'll get into. Simply amazing. I said after the first drive, I tweeted this out, it would not surprise me if this team scored on every single possession. One of the best tweets I saw yesterday was somebody taking a picture of their legs outstretched in sandals, crossed, and juices right next to their sandals. Jack Fox watching the Lions game, because that's exactly what it was. Jack Fox didn't need to show up to work. He didn't have to punch a clock. He didn't have to stretch. He didn't have to take one snap and kick a football in warm-up. All he did was have to walk. All he had to do was go and buy a ticket and sit up at Ford Field. 52-6, the final. Detroit's now won 9 of their first 10 for the first time since 1934. How awesome is that? 1934, man. I mean, this is the stuff we're seeing. I hope we embrace it. I think everybody is. And that's been the beauty of it. And knowing that you've got the right people in place, knowing that it's not going to slow down, we should enjoy every single second considering all the damn misery we have experienced in our lives. When it comes to National Football Leagues, there's only one other fan base that really comes close. But at least they've had some runs to the AFC Championship game. Heartbreaks, right, for sure, with the drive and John Elway. But they've had some of those deep runs. Detroit's had it a couple of times. Embarrassed by Washington. Heartbreak last year, San Francisco. This is, I say this every week, and I'm going to make a point to say it every week. This is the best team in the National Football League. This is the best football team on earth. And I understand how you feel because you look at Tennessee, you don't think they're very good. They got screwed against Minnesota, by the way, yesterday. I know you look at Jacksonville, you don't think they're very good. Their owner said before the season began, this is the most talented team we've ever had. Maybe he was talking to his general manager. Maybe he was talking to the coaches. Maybe they were trying to save their jobs before. I mean, come on. Really? And if it is, then what do you think that says about the Lions? And if it is, maybe you don't do the Jerry Jones thing and go in front of cameras and make those types of statements any longer. And just say, let's just do the boring statement for now. Let's just say, you know what? We think we're going to be pretty good. Let's let it play out. You don't have to go overboard. It's okay. You can do that when your team starts playing really well. Ask me this. When's the last time you saw Lions management talking to the media? They're 9-1, man. I mean, the media is on its way to the locker room or on the way to the podium. Are they stopping and getting Brad Holmes?
Probably when they unveiled the Barry Sanders statue. That was probably the last time I heard from Sheila.
Are they running to Sheila?
No. And she's not running to them
Jerry
either.
Jones's team loses 4 in a row, and he's the first one to talk to every member of the media. This is the beauty of it, right? And Detroit's not the only team that does this, by the way. Anyway, they're going to be in Indy next week. Colts come back. They score late. They beat the Jets. Did you see the winning percentage with the Jets? With Aaron Rodgers?
You sent me that, and that was a terrific tweet. There were a lot of good tweets yesterday, but that was a really good one.
Yeah, it's better. The Jets had a better winning percentage with Zach Wilson, and they had a better winning percentage with Sam Darnold.
Yikes.
Than they do with Aaron Rodgers. It is an absolute train wreck. If you're Devontae Adams, aren't you going, I went to the Raiders to New York, and it didn't get any better. If you're Zadarius Smith, you're going, I went from Cleveland to Detroit, and I'm in heaven. Could not wipe the smile off his face yesterday.
He was so happy.
The disappointing thing, obviously, is the injury to Alex Anzalone. If you read his lips, he said, it looks like a broken arm on tackling, and he's out, 6 to 8 weeks, something like that?
That's the report, yep.
And this team, somebody tweeted something yesterday about one of my comments about the Lions and how they're just so incredibly skilled and they're so good, right? And I said, well, they haven't really played anybody. That's the reference, because you look at the Bills' schedule, you look at the Niners' schedule, you look at the Chiefs' schedule, and I kind of tweeted back. I'm like, well, and they said, just saying. And I said, well, look at who the Niners have lost to, and Detroit has beat, or not the Niners. I forget who it was. This team had lost to all these 2 teams that Detroit has beaten, right? So they said, well, the Niners are still a championship team. Like, Niners are still a championship, and then they lose to Seattle.
What do people want? That's my question. And maybe this is a good problem to have because it's the first time that the Lions are this good. Yeah. So we're like, people are poking holes. What do you want from this team right now?
Right.
Pummeling everybody.
Everyone wants their validation. So prove it to me. How long does it take to prove something? Who do you have to beat in order to prove it against? And, I would use example like Houston last weekend. Houston's a good football team. And Detroit goes into Houston and beats them. And then, of course, what comes up is the injuries. Look at what injuries other teams are experiencing. And people seem to have forgotten Aiden Hutchinson's been out for a long time. Detroit beat Houston last week without Taylor Decker. So we'll get more into that. We'll give you our poll question. We've got a ton to get to. We're glad you're with us. We welcome you on the Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. This is X's and Bros across the great state of Michigan.
Hey, Michigan, let's go big. I'm Herman Moore, Lions all.
and they are made of the right kind of stuff, and those guys come together, you have a collective willpower that you can make the game any way you want it to go. That's exactly what you guys did. You came out after a rough game last week. We found a way to win, and we weren't having it today, man. I've got all kinds of notes, man. This thing turned into something. Offensively, man, we set a team record. 645 yards on offense, all right, and 38 first downs. Those are team records, gentlemen. So it goes without saying, everybody on offense is going to get a damn game ball.
Do you think it's only because we hear it once a week? I think it's so inspiring. He's so real, right? There's not many people on this earth you find who are real. So first you gotta be real. Second of all, you gotta be likable. And Dan Campbell is both. Good sound from the Lions locker room right after the 52-6 blowout win over Jacksonville at home, and now they're off to take on Indianapolis. By the way, Pistons ruled Washington last night, 124-104. Cade Cunningham continues to impress. Fourth triple-double of the year. He had 21 points. He had 10 boards. He had 10 assists. Jaden Ivey had 28. Malik Beasley had 26. Beasley's been really big for him, man. I mean, this is a guy, I know where this is on the landscape of things because, the Lions are the story, and they should be the story. But the Pistons are now within a game of 500, all right? And when you look at the three-point shooting, Malik Beasley going into the game against Toronto had 42 threes on the year. That was the ninth most in the NBA and tied for the most by any Piston in history in the first 13 games of a season, tied with Tobias Harris, ironically enough. He had 6 more last night, and one of the things that we all said collectively about what this team had to do better than they did a year ago when they won only 14 games is shoot the ball. Well, Detroit's shooting the ball much better now. They shot 47.5% from the floor last night. I know how good Washington is. Okay, they're not good. They've lost 8 in a row. But they're still out there, right? It's the same thing with Jacksonville. Oh, they're not very good. They're still out there. They're still NFL players, for crying out loud. So if I say this all the time, but it's worth repeating, if they don't blow them out or they don't beat them, then you're saying they're not good enough because you can't even beat a team like that. When they do beat them handily or they do blow them out, you're shrugging your shoulders and say, that team's not very good anyway. Can't win.
That's why I say, what do you want this team to do? They're right. Beating good teams. They're blowing out bad teams. Like, do you just – they're continuing the trend. They moved to 9-1. So what?
Yeah, I was referring to the Pistons. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, regarding the Lions, absolutely. What I was going to say is Malik Beasley has really helped this team shoot, right? They needed to be better shooters. They needed to be better defensively. They are both as of right now, and they're back in action at home against Chicago here tonight. Here's our poll question real quick. Our poll question is, who do you think is the best team in the AFC? Is it Kansas City, Buffalo, or Pittsburgh? Now, admittedly, I thought Pittsburgh was getting by strictly on their defense. And, of course, Chris Boswell with 6 field goals yesterday kind of reinforces my opinion of that. Bottom line is they beat a good Baltimore team. I probably thought higher of Baltimore than Pittsburgh going into the season. I liked Pittsburgh's draft picks. I respect the hell out of their coach. Their defense is always rock solid. They bring an attitude. There's no fan base like it in the NFL. You would have to admit that. Yes, you should worry about their offense a little bit, but they find ways. Do you know how many times Lamar Jackson has beaten Pittsburgh?
Once.
Now, it wasn't long ago, it was last week actually, probably this time last week, we said aloud, maybe Jared Goff has played himself out of the MVP conversation, right? I mean, 5 picks.
5
you don't
picks.
Understand why we thought that, right? I wonder if Lamar Jackson's played himself out of it after a dismal performance against Pittsburgh yesterday. Now, he didn't throw 5 picks, and he's got plenty of time to make it up. But if we're going to start making predictions or use recent experiences, recent results for our changing of opinion, then shouldn't we take that into consideration? I would hope so.
And it certainly isn't a team award. It's not. But the fact that the Ravens now have 4 losses, where Josh Allen's Bills have 2, Jared Goff's Lions have 1, that has to come into account.
I would think so. Josh Allen was fantastic yesterday.
It was terrific. Game-winning play, too.
Yeah, he had a bad pick. His touchdown run was special.
That's the Superman kind of stuff that we talk about when we just refer to Josh Allen as, and he, of course, is prone to fumble or throw that bad pick like you referred to, but you have to take that bad with the good, because the good is the game-winning play on 4th and 2 yesterday.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Just remind yourself of that when he does throw a pick and it costs him a game, or he does fumble and it costs him a game. I'm not taking anything away from him, because I think he is, as far as I'm concerned, he would be the leader right now in MVP. But last week I said, how come no one's talking about Jalen Hurts? And Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, obviously Saquon Barkley has been leading the way, and he's been in the conversation for MVP, and rightfully so. But I do believe Jalen Hurts should be in that conversation too. So it just, a few things. Joe Burrow would be in that conversation if Cincinnati actually won some games. He had another 300-yard, 3-touchdown passing performance last night, staging a bit of a comeback against the Chargers before the Chargers pull away. And the Chargers have been an unbelievable story, right? Look, people could say all they want about Jim Harbaugh. He's a different cat. There's no doubt about it. You don't know what you're getting with him when you get the, kind of like the quirky press conferences. That dude can flat out coach. And anybody who says he can't because he couldn't get Michigan past Ohio State and all this other stuff, guess what? San Diego last year won 4 games. They've got 7 wins now. Now, they're not better than Kansas City, the AFC West, but he's in line to be among those named for Coach of the Year. Got to be. I think Mike Tomlin's got to be there. I think Dan Campbell's got to be there. And I don't say that about Dan Campbell because it's Detroit. I say that because people don't look at some of the adversity this team has faced. Honestly, whether it be Taylor Decker last week, Frank Ragnow a couple of weeks prior to, Aiden Hutchinson all year, the loss of Marcus Davenport, the loss of Derek Barnes, now the loss of Alex Anzalone, the suspension to Brian Branch, the suspension to Jamison Williams. They find ways. And whether or not you're going to prioritize those specific individuals, the one thing they all have in common is what? They're all starters. All of them. And yet somehow Detroit has found a way. So I think he's in that conversation. When you're 9-1, you can say that about Andy Reid if you want, who's now 9-1. You can talk about it with Sean McDermott. You don't have to have the best record in the league to prove you're the best coach in the league. What they have faced, and we'll just specifically talk about Dan Campbell, what he has faced and how his team has not skipped a beat and how his team has not hung their heads and said, woe is me. There's something wrong here. There's a quote unquote curse. And how are we going to manage this? How are we going to get by with that? They found a way every single Sunday. It's beautiful. We got to hit a break. When we come back, we get your thoughts on all the stuff that is the Detroit Lions and what they've been able to do. And a college football coach that said something that rings true for sure. It rings true because the NCAA and what's going on in college football, something's amiss. We'll explain when we come back on X's and Bros across the great state of Michigan after this.
Huge here for my good friend Josh Garvey. Now, Josh joined
In a week when there's been a lot of conversation about your tough schedule, playing on the road, some of the struggles that you guys have had, but also some of the positive moments, what do you think you showed the committee tonight?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know what they look for. I really don't know what they look for anymore. So I would welcome anybody in that committee to come down to this league and play in this environment. So it's a tough place to play.
That's Kirby Smart. He's the head coach of Georgia after the win over Tennessee over the weekend in Knoxville. Really good Tennessee team that was the number 8 college football playoff team going into the game against Georgia. I'm not going to spend this whole segment on Tennessee and Georgia. I just would remind folks, when we look at these college football playoffs, I'd remind you that I've said time and time again, the 12-team playoff doesn't alleviate anything. All it does is give us more football. And all it does is give people who support those teams more chances to spend gobs of money traveling. I was just saying to Trent during the break, let's just say based on last weekend, if you're a fan of Notre Dame, you want to see them play in the playoffs, you travel to Tennessee, then you travel to the Rose Bowl, then you travel to the semifinals, and then you travel to the finals. If your team gets there, and I don't think Notre Dame's good enough to do that. That's 4 games where you're on the road watching your team play, if you want to. How do you afford that? Like, traveling down to Tennessee is one thing. Then you got to go to the Rose Bowl and play probably Oregon, right? Definitely Oregon, if they were the one. And then the semifinals, and then you definitely want to go to the national championship game, right? Who wouldn't? It's, folks, let's not get fooled, okay? We're smart people out here. We want the 12-team playoff. You got analysts saying the same thing. You got to have a 12-team playoff. It's all money. Just follow the trail. It's not solving a damn thing, man.
And also the complaining about where the cutoff is and what teams should have gotten in and didn't get. Like, that's going to happen no matter where you draw that line. So if you push that line from 4 down to 12, it's no different because the team that's 13th is going to bitch.
Right. I've said it forever. It's exactly what I've said. I said, you're not getting anything different. You're going to have plenty of teams that are pissed off. Look, some teams are going to take themselves out of it, BYU this past weekend. But there's going to be teams out there that say, you know what? We've only got 1 loss, or we've got 2 losses, and this other team has got 1 loss, and we're better than they are. I'll guarantee you, Ole Miss and Tennessee and others are going, we're better than Notre Dame. They lost to Northern Illinois, but they only got 1 loss. Indiana's 10-0. We feel like we're better. People down in the SEC, absolutely they feel it. How many teams from those conferences are enough? It's not solving a damn thing, okay? In the end, generally, and this is the first time we'll see it with the 12-team playoff, in the end, you're only getting the best 4 teams anyway, which you could have had based on the 14 playoff anyway. Now, perhaps you'd say, well, wait a minute, Oregon and Ohio State would not have made it because they're both in the Big Ten. So how would you figure that one out? You don't need the conference championship games, I guess, to do that. I mean, those 2 teams might play in the conference championship game anyway. And Oregon already played Ohio State, and Oregon beat Ohio State. And if Ohio State beats them in the Big Ten title game, then what do you do, right? I mean, this is the stuff the SEC has gone through with Alabama and Georgia or LSU when they were hot and all that other stuff. To me, we act like this solves all our problems. We act like this is as close to March Madness in college basketball as we can get in college football. And I've said time and time again, this is about the almighty dollar and college football. Now, regarding the Lions, I had said this a little bit earlier in the show. I said I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions score on every possession. I watch their offense, and I think of the great Niners and Colts offenses. Well, Trent doesn't remember, but if you remember the Lions, or I should say the Niners back in the day with Joe Montana, even when Steve Young was there too, when you see them play and you watch how easily they move the football. It's not a knock on the opposing team's defense. It just feels like every single time they're going to score a touchdown. It's hard for you to go, yeah, they've got plenty of flaws. Find me the flaw in Detroit's offense. Honestly. I mean, you've got two running backs in Montgomery and Gibbs, who might be arguably, depending on the team, the number one option on just about every team. Just about. Probably more than not, right? Not Philadelphia. I get that. Not Baltimore. I understand that. But for the most part. And they've scored a touchdown in the same game 10 times. That's an NFL record. Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta when healthy. Even Tim Patrick's been really good. It's another example of when we were going, oh, my God, you've got to find that third receiver. I said, no, I think you got to validate your number two receiver. And that's what Jameson Williams has done when he's not suspended. And the three receiver, I think you can find a lot of those. You don't have to be Houston. You don't need Dell and Diggs and Collins. You get two guys, and the third guy works in that offense. It's going to be fine as long as you're healthy. And that's what they've got. Offensive line, as I tweeted yesterday, arguably the best unit. Yes, I said unit in all of football.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I saw your tweet yesterday. I couldn't agree more because I think it's the best team in football, the Lions, and it's the best unit on that best team.
Right.
And, I mean, even if the Lions were 5-5, I'd look at you and say, dude, Penei Sewell, Kevin Zeitler, Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, Taylor Decker. That's the best unit in football.
Yeah, who's better? I mean, give me a better unit. And you can use wide receivers. I just mentioned Houston's wide receivers, pretty damn good. If you want to look at running backs,
it could be Detroit.
It's Detroit's running backs, okay? If you want to look at defensive line, is it Pittsburgh? I don't know.
Probably Pittsburgh.
Okay, so would you take Detroit's offense? It'd be a fun game to watch, wouldn't it? This is just my opinion, and yes, there's a slight bit of homerism there. I think it's the best unit in football. I tweet that out, and somebody responded, great comparison. Seems like we do whatever we want. Great O-line and weapons all over the field. You got the Niners back in the day, Peyton Manning and the Colts, if you recall them back in the day. They were incredible. So I decided to do a little digging, and I thought, okay, what are some of the best offenses in league history? Peyton Manning in Denver had one of the best offenses in all of football. Randy Moss with the Vikings, Aaron Rodgers with the Packers. What they were averaging in points per game and rushing yards. And there is no weakness to Detroit's offense. Zero. They can throw it. They can run it. They use multiple, so many different sets. It's incredible. They beat you with, if you want to call trick plays, end arounds. They've got speed. They're sure-handed. They can get the tough yards, and they can break free for long gainers. There is no weakness, none, in Detroit's offense. Their quarterback is having as fine a season as any quarterback in the league. He is precise. He is under control. He is in command. If you want to nitpick and say he doesn't run real well, that's fine. Some of the best offenses, and it's the reason I kind of did some digging into some research, the quarterbacks with some of the, like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Kurt Warner, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, these are all some of the best offenses the NFL has seen, according to a number of websites. Drew Brees, Joe Theismann, Jim Kelly. How many of those guys are real mobile?
Bingo.
So
not many.
When I bring up that example, I take everything into account. I don't try to get caught up in a moment. I think you know that about me by now. I don't try to get caught up in a moment. I truly believe this offense, I'm not saying it's the best ever. It's the best Lions I've ever had. But it does not have a weakness. See, when the Lions had Mitchell, Moore, Perriman, Morton, Barry Sanders, David Sloan. David Sloan was a tight end. Really good player. They had 5 of those 6 just about any team would love to have. The one misnomer there is Scott Mitchell. They didn't want him. The offensive line was good. It was. Lomas Brown, Kevin Glover. They were good. They weren't dominant. Not like this team. Not like these 5 guys. When these 5 guys play together, there's nothing like it. Like they should be doing a commercial for 5 guys. I mean, if you're the marketing director for 5 Guys Burgers, am I wrong there?
No, that's brilliant.
You should take those 5 members of the Lions offensive line. 5 guys, you can pay me later. You should take the 5 guys for the Lions offensive line and put them in front of a tray with a heap of 5 Guys Burgers and just do the commercial there with these guys just chowing and saying, we're all in unison, and then they finish at the same time or whatever you want. You can thank me later. That's what they should be doing. That's how good they are, right? So anyway, I tweet this out yesterday. There's a guy down in Georgia who does a show, and he said, the Lions are contenders, but there are other contenders in the NFC, and the Niners seem to have been counted out, and the Eagles should be 9-1. He said, don't discount the Niners. They're a championship quality team. And I respect San Francisco. I do. I think they've got a really good coach. I think they've got outstanding receivers. I think Christian McCaffrey's unbelievable. I think their offensive line is good. I think people love Trent Williams. I think Penei Sewell is better than Trent Williams, even though they play different tackle positions.
I think more people are starting to come around on that, by the way.
I think
you and I have both believed that for a while.
People in Detroit are. I can't say that nationally they are. I mean, I watched that broadcast yesterday, and they kept loving on Trent Williams. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. I'm just in a comparison. They just lost to Seattle though 20-17. They're now 5-5. They're now 3-3 at home. And yes, they've had to deal with adversity. Yeah. Is there a team in the NFL this year that hasn't had to deal with adversity?
No.
Even Kansas City has. You lose guys like Pacheco and Rice. That's some adversity.
Their
right?
best receiver and their best running back. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to deal. Every team has had to deal with it. Stop with Christian McCaffrey's been hurt all year. He's an impact player. He's a great player. But I would remind you, some of their backups have had some pretty good days. All right. And fantasy football owners would know that, including yours truly. Even though I lost again last weekend.
Oh no.
Yeah. It's painful. Anyway, they're 5-5, man. Because they played in a championship game a year ago, doesn't mean that they're automatically championship caliber again this year. There's too many things that can happen. So I wrote this. I said to this guy, it's always funny how people bring up other teams' injury and ignore the Lions, like Hutchinson and last week Decker. Lions just play through it and win. And I also said the Niners have lost to the Vikings, the Rams, and the Cardinals. All teams Detroit has beaten. Just say it. Now, that was before they lost to Seattle. So I don't want to sit there and continue to have a back and forth with this dude who isn't from Detroit. And sometimes that's a good thing because that means he's not as close to it as you and I. I don't care who you are. You get emotionally attached.
It's human nature.
Your team. This is the best team you've seen in your lifetime as a Detroit Lions fan. You're going to be protective. You're a mama bear protecting her cubs. That's okay. Sometimes, though, that clouds your judgment. So you might need somebody from the outside to give us a sense. Folks, why do you think on X's and BrO's we bring in opposing broadcasters or opposing people who write for a certain publication that follows the team that's about to play the team that you and I follow? The reason we do that is because we want to either validate our belief or find out what we could be missing? Are you open-minded enough to see what your team's weakness may be?
What should we watch for if your team is going to beat the team that we watch closely? How is it going to happen?
And just as importantly, how do you feel as somebody who doesn't cover this team on a regular basis? What do you see? Maybe we're seeing too much. Maybe we're too protective. Now, with the Lions, you can't necessarily say that, because at 9-1, with no weakness on offense, very little weakness on defense. I mean, folks, other teams are going to score. Other teams are going to get first downs. Other teams are going to force penalties. Other teams will force turnovers on you. Doesn't make them better. I know there's people at Ford Field yesterday, and there's people watching. I was watching with some friends, and it's like, oh my God, stop him. You do understand they're going to move the ball once in a while. I mean, they've got a pro too who can throw and a pro who can catch. There's actually a couple of players on that team you wouldn't mind having, right? You'd love to have a couple of their defensive linemen. Don't tell me you wouldn't. Trayvon Walker is a really good player. Hines Allen's a really good player. Don't tell me you wouldn't want them. So those things are bound to happen. But in the end, it's about what your team does for the length of the football game. And how do you argue with what your team did when they've set numerous franchise records? Well, the franchise isn't that good. I don't care how good or bad your franchise has been. When you put up 645 total yards of offense, you run 79 plays, you hold a team to only 10 first downs and 41 rushing yards. That's an NFL team. That team has actually beaten a couple of teams. Those guys get paid well. Those guys have first-round draft picks. They have high first-round draft picks. This is not a little league team. It's not a college football team. This is different than college, okay? This isn't Texas against a mid-major team where it's just one steamroll because they just don't have the bodies. Jacksonville's had a chance to get their bodies. Jacksonville's got some guys who are good players. And look at how dominant Detroit is. I'm not sure we can totally put this in perspective. I think Lions coaches and players, probably more coaches than even the players, they get it. Because the coaches are watching film all week and they're like, listen, that team can give some teams some problems. That team causes some issues.
Shep, you see a lot of stats online that kind of try to put this in perspective, like you just said. But here's one right here. The last 90 minutes of football the Lions have played. So I'm going back to the second half against Houston, who I think a lot of people would agree is a pretty good team. They're outscoring opponents 71-6. 71-6. The Lions are outscoring opponents in the last 90 minutes of football.
Half,
right? Correct, and they only gave up 6 to the Jaguars. So if that's not dominance, I don't know what is. And if that doesn't speak to how much of a push the O-line gets and how potent and how creative and how just demoralizing this Lions offense is, I don't know what does.
Their quarterback had a perfect quarterback rating.
Perfect.
Okay?
Perfect.
412 yards and 4 touchdowns. You got running backs. The two of them each scored a touchdown. 2 for Montgomery, 1 for Gibbs. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams had season high in receiving yards.
And hey, Brock Wright, Sam Laporta's out, so let's get Brock Wright a touchdown. Why not?
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Let's just make sure everybody gets involved. Zylstra got involved. Patrick got involved. I honestly believe this. I think Ben Johnson's on the sideline and said, okay, I got a touchdown for him. I got one for him. I got one for him. I got one for him. Let's make sure, I tell you what, let's try to dial up this play right here.
Who doesn't have one yet?
Yeah, let's feed some guys and reward them. Even Allen Robinson, who got into the game, had a rock for 70 yards. Fun game, man. A lot of fun. Meyer hotline is open, 866-838-4843. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. We are also live on StreamYard. You can do that and see what's going on there, and follow us if you'd like on Facebook at X's and Bros. You could do it live on XB Mornings, and you can follow us live on YouTube as well, X's and Bros, right here across the great state of Michigan.
Rake in the riches every Saturday in November with the Fall Harvest at
All right, back with you on X's and Bros Monday through Friday from 6 until 9 throughout the great state of Michigan. Glad you're listening to us in Cadillac on WKAD, the Ticket 93.7 FM, in Grand Rapids 96.1 FM, the game that reaches Kalamazoo and Holland. It's a blowtorch on the west side of the state, and we're honored to be there. In Petoskey and Charlevoix, WMBN 104.7 FM, the Ticket Northern Michigan. In Lansing on 7:30 a.m., the Score. And in Traverse City, WKAD 93.7 FM, the Ticket. If you can't pick up any of those stations, make sure you find us on MichiganSportsNetwork.com, or you can watch us on StreamYard, whether it be on X. We broadcast live on X, YouTube, and on Facebook as well. Find us at XB Mornings on X and X's and Bros on YouTube and Facebook. We're going to get to some text coming up here. The Red Wings are back in action tonight. They're in San Jose. They have lost 2 straight. They've dropped 4 of their last 5. They have the second to last worst points in the division. Just a point in front of Montreal. In fact, the Wings with 15 points are just 1 in front of the Habs and the Blue Jackets for the entire conference. This team has been a massive disappointment so far. We talk about polls all the time. We used to do it during the Tiger season. We've done it during the NFL season. And I'll guarantee you every poll coming out this week has the Lions number 1. No doubt in my mind. All right? Breakfast on me if I'm wrong. The Red Wings, the latest NHL power poll rankings, has the Red Wings at number 21. Here's what ESPN writes. Patrick Kane, if the Red Wings power play were in the dumps, maybe we could preach patience for Kane, but it's not. And it might be time to move on from Kane in fantasy. Who cares? He's getting all the opportunities required. He's just not producing. Detroit is under 500. I read an article over the weekend where Dylan Larkin was saying, and quoted as saying, all he cares about is reaching the playoffs. Okay. I don't blame him. Every player wants to play in the playoffs, number 1. But number 2, he has busted his ass. He works his ass off to try and get there. But they lose the other day. They were up 3-1 and fell. And then they lose to Anaheim. And 6-4 was the final against the Ducks, in case you missed it. Afterwards, I get certain quotes just drive me crazy. Afterwards, Larkin said, "This one stings. 2 games in a row, we had a 2-goal lead and started to turn the puck over." I am so tired of hearing Red Wings players say, "This one stings." You get stung by something, you don't go near there anymore. You learn from it. This team hasn't learned from it. There's something about this team, and it's hard to identify. It's hard. First of all, you can't compare 2 different sports, all right, because of different things. But I was around on Friday calling the Pistons in Toronto, and thanks to Dennis Fithian for filling in, did a great job as always. But I felt a connective. There was a feeling of connectivity there with the Pistons. Oh, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, all right? I'm just telling you, there's something there that they like one another. They do some team bonding stuff that oftentimes you don't see by professional athletes or professional teams. You see it from college teams all the time. But Trajan Langdon, J.B. Bickerstaff thought it was really important for the Pistons to do something like this, and I think it shows. It may not show up in the final box score all the time, and it may not show up in the wins and losses column all the time, although they've pulled it within 1 game of 500 and should get there after tonight. But the way they play is so much different than it was a year ago. Greatly helps to have a guy like Malik Beasley who can hit threes, Tim Hardaway who can hit threes, Tobias Harris who can hit threes, even though his shooting is down from where it was a year ago. But there's a togetherness there. I can't say that I've been around the Red Wings, but watching them play, I don't feel that. And something's going to happen with this team. If this continues, something's going to happen. Derek Lalonde's going to get fired. There's going to be Steve Osman has to do something because right now it's not working. We heard during the Tiger season all year long about the young guys. And I don't want to say it was an excuse, but it just felt like somebody was falling back on that as a reason to why they weren't performing or they weren't winning. In other words, substitute Shep, they've got the young guys so ... Oh, so you don't expect them to win. I almost have a feeling that that's similar to what the Red Wings are doing. Well, we've got this guy ... Berggren, Edvinson, right? It's like, wait, hold on a second. These guys are promoted for a reason. And I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt for the most part. But at some point, when that point is really up to coaches and players and perhaps us to decide on whether or not they should actually remain and whether or not you see them getting better. You want to use the excuse or the reasoning behind a team's struggles because they're young. When do they stop being young? Because you're going to see different situations as a young player through a regular basis throughout the season. It's going to happen all the time. All right? You're going to be put there out there on the power play. You're going to put there out on key phase. We need you on the penalty kill, right? We're going to put you out there in 3-on-3 and overtime. There are firsts, and then playing certain teams, it's going to cause some issues too. I am tired of hearing about the constant discussion. Well, this team is young. I mean, the Pistons are the fourth youngest team in the NBA. And they're not an NBA title contender. They're probably not even a playoff contender. But they have found a way to come together and play a better brand of basketball and play the style that it requires that team to play in order for them to win. They've only been blown out in one game. And I say only, it happens in the NBA, right? The Red Wings feel like when I watch them, tell me if you think you get a different feeling. When I watch them, they haven't figured out the style of play they need to play at in order for them to win. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, and that's why it's so disappointing in my eyes because last season they felt like a playoff team down the stretch. And then, of course, Larkin got hurt, and then whatever happened. But step one, I feel like, is making the playoffs, and then you build on that. Well, they didn't quite make it last year for whatever reason. And then this year, they haven't seemed to build on it at all, Sheps. They don't feel like a playoff team at all this year. Whereas last year, towards the end of the year, I thought they did.
Yeah, I've never been a big believer that you do something one season, it carries over into the next.
But you can build on it, is all I'm saying. If they would have...
If you get better, they didn't do anything in the offseason to make themselves considerably better.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Sure. Yep.
So I've said that time, and I said that before the season began. You are relying on certain players. Their first line is good. Everybody else, where is it? Right? And like I said, at some point, young guys, when are you going to stop saying that Joe Veleno is young? I mean, that's a first-round pick, and he's a third, fourth-line player, right? That's it can't be that way. It just can't. You've got to have better performances from players.
And the progression of the young players, quote unquote, has seemed to stall out with Sider and Raymond.
Give me the young guys. Give me the young guys who you've looked at and said, wow, they are so much better than they were even a year ago or 2 years ago.
Can't do it, Shep. Can't do it.
You can't do it. Now, I've complained about Cade Cunningham's turnovers. Dude's got 4 triple-doubles. He's becoming a much better passer. There's no doubt about that.
And the team is significantly better than it was a year ago.
But not because he's overall improved his game.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking for the Red Wing, besides the top guys, the expectations. I'm looking for the young Red Wings who's greatly improved his game, or the young guys, plural, who have bettered their game in areas they needed to see improvement. I don't see that right now.
And this conversation is one we're going to have even about the Tigers next year. And I don't mean to get off on that tangent, but
we might. We might. And we'll get to some Tigers news here in a moment. Kind of an extended Tigers news. We'll get to that here in a moment. We've got to take a time out. This is X's and Bros across the great state of Michigan. Glad you're with us on a Monday morning.
Hey, Michigan, let's go big.
18 after the hour. Welcome back. X's and BrO's Monday through Friday. On 818, we give you our heels in hero or hero in heels of the weekend. Looking forward to yours. If you want to, send us one at Sports Radio to 21,000 or call in with your hero in heels at the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. Trent, let's get to some text, shall we? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Someone says, if the Lions don't go to the Super Bowl, I'll be very disappointed. That's John from Holt. He says, I believe.
Me too, John. I agree 100% with that. There's nothing wrong with saying that, man. There isn't.
And that expectation is growing every single week.
Yeah, it's like what we were saying during the postseason. Somebody actually called in. I apologize, forget who it was, but they said, Shep, my expectation is Detroit goes to the American League Championship Series. This was after they beat Houston in the series. And I said, good for you. Raise the bar. It's all right to do that. Okay? I mean, because you were competitive against Cleveland during the regular season. Raise the bar and have the expectations.
There's no doubt it is Super Bowl or bust.
And
no doubt.
And take advantage of it. And, here's the reason you want it. It's not just because you haven't had it before. It's not because your team has never been there before. It's because of how your team is playing, the coaches you have, and you know this. I mean, every team is different. This team is not the same as last year, even though you've got 4 of the 5 offensive linemen, you've got the same running backs, the same wide receivers for the most part, the same quarterback, the same coordinator, and so on. So there are different personalities to every team. Teams change. Ben Johnson, and this is just a guess here, I think Detroit's going to lose both their coordinators. Now, we thought that a year ago. I know my son said this to me yesterday. He said, boy, was I wrong about Aaron Glenn. He said, just a few years ago, I wanted him fired. I said, I don't think you're alone in that. I said, the difference is, and I said, Aaron Glenn's done a great job. He has. He's done a wonderful job with this defense. Ben Johnson gets all the love because people love the razzle-dazzle. They stand up when Detroit has the football because they think they're going to see something that they rarely see. And that's fine. And that's cool. And it's probably more oftentimes than not true. But Aaron Glenn's steady hand on this defense has been magnified by the losses that he's had and yet overcome without any bitching and complaining. None.
And he's going to have to do it again with Alex Anzalone breaking his arm.
Right. So you come in with Ben Neiman, and he's doing the job. Don't forget, they also lost Reeves Maben for an extended period of time. That's been a big loss than people realize. Reeves Maben, captain of special teams, but they put him in on a number of defensive situations, certain situations, and he's been very good. He's responded really well. They lose Rodriguez for a game, and he bounces back and plays well. So you're going to see some of that, and this is the reason you build depth and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of different thoughts here. But Aaron Glenn is in line to be a head coach somewhere else. It's okay to feel like this team should win the Super Bowl, not just because of their record, but because of how they've played on a regular basis, a consistent basis. It's hard to be consistent in life. Detroit has been consistent every single week. Well, what about the loss to Tampa? No, they were consistent. It was the red zone 1 for 7 that killed that team that game, right? But their offense moved the football. Their defense, for the most part, was really good. Baker Mayfield's numbers were not fantastic in that win over Detroit. So I think they've been as consistent a team as there has been in the entire National Football League, whether Kansas City won or not yesterday. I think Detroit's been the most consistent team. That is hard to do. So it's okay to think it's Super Bowl or bust because they have proven, outside of maybe Philadelphia, Detroit has proven, and you're going to have to go through Detroit into Ford Field, and where you make a huge difference. Detroit has been the most consistent team. So believe it. Believe it's Super Bowl or bust. At some point, you're going to say this. It's Super Bowl win or bust. Your mind's going to change eventually because they're going to go into, they got to go to Indianapolis. Then they go to Chicago. They got home to Chicago, home to Green Bay, home to the Bills, which will be a litmus test. By the time they play at Chicago, Matt Eberflus could be gone because that team continues to just suck the life out of every Chicago Bears fan.
They stink.
And then, obviously, they finish at home against Minnesota, which offensively has been challenged the last few weeks. Outside of Justin Jefferson, you look at that offense and you're like, okay, whatever.
And I know I sound like
from them. I'm just saying they don't look like they did in their first 4 games where they were lighting the world on fire. Their first 4 or 5 games because they started 5-0, right?
They've come back to earth a little bit, and that's a team that you've beaten on the road already. So you get to play them one more time at home.
Yeah.
That counts for something.
It counts for something. Yeah, it's not the definitive final nail in the proverbial coffin for me because last year Detroit won in Green Bay, but Green Bay won in Detroit. To me, I'm looking at how a team plays, not where they play, but how a team plays. Buffalo's playing really good football, right? Philadelphia is playing really good football. Detroit has played really good football all year long. Pittsburgh, for the most part, offensively, they're challenged. They're going to be in the game. I'm sure there's a lot of things that they wish they could play, do differently. The Chargers are playing really good football. This team's everything's going to go through Ford Field. If they can stay as healthy as possible the rest of the way, everything's going through Ford Field. So I love the expectations. So that's number one. So I love that text. Here's the other thing. And I had somebody tell me this yesterday. I don't understand why the Lions, while they're still playing a lot of their starters in the early fourth quarter. And my response was, because this is not a college football team. College, you got 105 guys on the sidelines. That's going to change after this year. That's the one little caveat that people have forgotten about the whole NIL and the $22 million going from TV rights to all these Power 5 schools. They're going to lose players.
But they'll go from 105 down to 85. It'll still be.
Yeah, I think it's 90. I think it's 90, right?
90, okay.
Yeah. So you're going from like 105, 104, whatever it is, down to 90. And you may not think it's a big deal, but look, there's 20 guys right there who are primarily walk-ons. They're going to be able to go someplace else and probably play. Because, or at least vie for some playing spot, because these Power 5 schools aren't going to be able to hold them. But this is in the NFL. You've got 48 guys, right? You've got 53-man rosters, 48 guys active on
who dress.
Sunday.
Yep,
48. You've got strictly 11 offense, 11 defense, right? So there's 22. So let's say you want to replace all of them. That leaves you with 26 players. You have a long snapper, a kicker, and a punter. So what does that leave you with? That leaves you with 23 players. A lot of those guys are already playing. Defensive line, right? They're rotating.
Yeah.
Wide receivers, they're rotating. Allen Robinson had a catch. Cornerbacks, guys in the secondary, they're in there in nickel packages, Robertson or Rakestraw or whatever. You can't just turn it over. This is not a shift in hockey or a shift at your business, okay? You're not just turning things over and plugging in a new guy. That's not how it works in the NFL. You had to play still some of your starters because you've got to field a team out there. I have said this ad nauseum for over a decade now. The NFL should be allowed to expand its roster. If you're not going to expand the roster, dress all 53 guys on Sunday. I don't know why it's impossible for the NFL to adopt that. And especially when they start going to an 18-game schedule. If the players are going to agree to something like that, and this is a discussion for another day, but if the players are going to agree to something like that, you better believe they should be agreeing to, hey, we got a 53-man dress and we need to increase our roster. Now, are there good enough players out there to say they deserve to make an NFL team? That's a good debate. But that has to be part of the negotiation if you're the National Football League. 818, we've got our heroes and heels. Make sure you get yours in. We get to more of your texts, some of your phone calls on the Meijer hotline, 866-838-4843, when we return to X's and Bros after this on a Monday morning.
Rake in the riches every Saturday in November with the Fall
The ball's in his hands the majority of the night, but he understands, the total game. He understands what his teammates need, what the team needs in the moment, and I think you're seeing him express all those things. So he's growing from a leadership standpoint. I think the empathy of understanding his teammates, he's continuing to study and learn those things. But, again, he held us accountable to doing the things that we needed to do tonight.
JB Bickerstaff after his team's win in Washington, 124-104. Yes, I understand Washington 2-10 now after the loss. Yes, I understand that the win in Toronto, the Raptors had lost 5 in a row, that they were 2-10 at the time. Again, I'll go back to my earlier comment, and that is if you don't beat them, people view you as a failure and as a team that isn't even close. If you do beat them, they don't want to give you credit because the other team's not very good. So you've got to beat those teams that are on your proverbial schedule. They get Chicago tonight. I don't know what it takes, what team you have to beat in order for you to be impressed. And I'm not asking you to be impressed with every single game, all right? Every time a team wins, I'm not suggesting you go out there and go, you know what? They've arrived. Way to go.
Perfect example was last week against the Heat when the Pistons had a double-digit lead with under 2 minutes. Blew it, go to overtime, then they end up winning in overtime. Yeah, but it doesn't. You don't need to be like, oh, that's great, they won a game.
Right. And the
that
same
was
thing
bad.
And the same thing with Milwaukee. And unlike football, see, basketball, hockey, and baseball, because we see so many, and because there are so many peaks and valleys, except for the Cleveland Cavaliers right now that won again yesterday and are 15-0, but will probably lose to Boston would be my guess if they're going to lose. And they get them next. You look at Detroit and you see some highs, you see some lows. You don't want to get too caught up. It's hard to pass judgment yet. And I respect that. 15 games doesn't do that. I ask you to only look at how a team plays, not the end result all the time. How does the team play? You have to recognize the difference between Detroit, the Pistons now, compared to where they were a year ago. It's the same thing with the Lions. As great as last year was at 12-4 and reaching the NFC Championship game and probably should have reached the Super Bowl, the way this team goes about its business, I know there's a little bit of a cliche that says, well, now we know what it takes. Now we know what has to be done. Now we're going to focus on what really is most important to us. We will be back with a vengeance. Saw a really good documentary over the weekend regarding the Michigan goal. Mike Legg. Have you seen it? It's worth it.
I am not.
All right. Of course, Mike Legg did the lacrosse goal that other people now do on a pretty regular basis, but it's always fun to watch. He had joined a Michigan team that had come up short in the national championship games, losing on a pretty regular basis, getting upset in the NCAA tournament, even though they were the best team, and then the CCHA, a 1 seed, viewed as a favorite to win a national championship and couldn't get it done. They finally did, winning back-to-back titles, Marty Turco in net primarily, but Mike Legg was part of it. But after losing to Maine in overtime in what was the longest game in NCAA history, and Mike Legg lost the face-off, lost the draw, the defensive for Michigan, the defensive draw that allowed the game-winning goal. The players said the next year it was that was their sole purpose. It wasn't to make the NCAA tournament. It was to win the NCAA tournament. Football teams, I think, have I don't want to say easier time, but a more understanding of learning that lesson because you're playing once a week. It's hard to do that in the other 3 sports when you have such long seasons because you know you're going to have to deal with some ups and downs. Look at Kansas City's Chiefs a year ago and how they've had to battle. Last year, 11 wins. They weren't quite dominant as they were the year before. People counted them out, including yours truly. They counted them out, and the Chiefs did it anyway. With the Pistons, granted, beating teams the last couple of games that are nothing special. Some of their earlier ways that they played, whatever you want to. Oh, we beat the Lakers. Good for you. there's only one team that blew them out, and that was the Knicks, right? They beat Philadelphia without Joel Embiid. They lost to a good Miami team. They came back, beat a good Miami team. There are certain things that how they have played this year has probably changed people's minds about where this team could get to. Not that they're going to win the division or the conference, but Trent and I had this conversation. The expectation was 30 wins or more. And I know there's a lot of people that said, you're crazy. No possible way they're going to do that. Well, now you may be rethinking it a little bit because of how they've come together. Haven't seen that with the Red Wings. We see it on a regular basis with the Lions. And when you hear J.B. Bickerstaff talking about what Cade Cunningham does, he has been doing this. He seems to have taken it upon himself to make himself a more all-around player. I remember watching Magic Johnson early in his career and thinking to myself, the only weakness to his game is his three-point shooting. Guess what? He worked on his three-point shooting. And look at how good he became and how much of a threat he became. And we'll see Magic Johnson at the next big Michigan State game. All you got to do is make sure you know, he'll tell you, I'll be there at the big games. Don't see him many others. Michael Jordan, what did he have to do? Work on his three-point shooting. He did that and became a scary three-point shooter. Cade Cunningham, it's almost like he took stock of himself and said, here's what I got to do. I got to be better with the basketball in my hands. And when I don't have the basketball in my hands, and a guy like Marcus Sasser is out there, for example, I have to be more of a threat to shoot. And I can't settle. And I think he's done that for the most part. This is overall, you want to nitpick a game or two, you can do that with just about every single player in the NBA. Yesterday, very effective. 7 for 15 from the floor, 2 of 4 from 3, 21 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, and perhaps the biggest statistic in that entire line has nothing to do with double digits. 2 turnovers. That's it. Then you know, when you start cutting back on the turnovers, then you know that his game has come full circle. I asked a couple of people the other day while getting ready for the call of the Pistons-Raptors game on FanDuel Sports. I said, how do you teach a young player to value the basketball a little bit more? How do you do that? It's not always easy because they want to make a play. Every sport, these guys are all type A personalities. I've worked with them and I've covered them. Trust me when I tell you this. They all are in belief of their ability, and they should be. They want to be the very best. I don't care if you're Tim Patrick or Amon-Ra St. Brown. You want to be the very best. Sometimes you have to accept your role, but you still don't doubt that you can be the very best. I'd be worried if a guy didn't say that. So Cade Cunningham, when I was asking about that, people are like, that game has to slow down for you a little bit. And it seems the more I watch him, the more I think the game has slowed down for him. And I know that's kind of a cliche, but it's very true. It's true in basketball. It's true for goalies. It's true for quarterbacks and cornerbacks without a doubt. It's true for pitchers, right? And hitters. I mean, it's just about every athlete. You can tell when the game slows down for them, how they're more under control of what they're doing.
And Shep, to your point, though, the numbers do back it up in every aspect but the turnovers. And I always contend that some of that has to do with usage rate. You still want to get it down, but he's having a career year. He's having a tremendous year. And the Pistons are 7-8 because of
He's having an all-star season.
Correct.
He's having an all-star season, which is, it's just the first step. I get how people feel about all-star nominees and nods, and the fact that it's oftentimes a when you look at it, it's you feel like it's a popularity contest. But he really is having a really, really good season. I'm not going to say great season. He's having a really good season. And when you look at what he's done in his career so far. Not many players have done what he's done. And not many players have been able to do some of the things that he's recently done. I'm talking about all time. I'm talking about balance in a game. So it's really fun to watch him grow, I think. And we just wanted to spend a couple of moments on that, giving him some praise because, we talk a lot of football, especially on Mondays, especially during the football season, but it's worth it. Every day we call a game on FanDuel Sports, we have what is called a production meeting in the morning. So we jump on the phone and what are your storylines? What do you want to talk about in the open, which is to get you ready, the storyline for the game. And Friday, we're on the call and people are saying, what should we talk about? I would guess it's Cade Cunningham. And I said, look, I think fans need to be introduced or at least reinforced to introduce some of the new players. So I really wanted to talk about Malik Beasley, and we did. And I thought it was appropriate. Malik Beasley, you talk about a confident guy. Obviously, he's been around for a little bit, 9 years. But here's a guy who has changed the threat of Detroit offensively because of his three-point shooting. Tim Hardaway, when healthy, Tobias Harris to a certain extent, Harris a little bit longer in the tooth, but still playing a decent game so far. Malik Beasley has changed things without a doubt.
This season, Shep, he's had games with 6 threes that he hit, 4 threes, 8 threes, 5 threes. You just go down the list. He's nailing 3-pointers.
Yeah, I think it's 7 times he's had multiple 3-point games, something like that. That's an added value to your team that you did not possess a year ago.
And that's something that when we play the Pistons promo that some of you might hear when George Blaha was previewing the show, the great George Blaha, he was previewing the Pistons season. And he was talking about how Cade is so deadly in the lane and in and around the basket that he just needs some guys to space the floor for him. And Malik Beasley has done that. He's done wonders for a guy like Cade Cunningham and himself and this team.
Yes, stretching the floor a little bit. 6 triples yesterday. It's not always about the numbers, but it's just the threat sometimes.
Yeah,
that
the presence
forces
out
one
there.
guy to stay out on Malik Beasley, opening things up maybe in a one-on-one situation or some type of pick and roll, some type of zipper play down the side of the lane that allows certain players to do what they do best. You've got to have balance in basketball, period. You've got to have threats around the perimeter. Otherwise, they're just going to sag. And then you just live with what you're dealing with. Toronto has that to a certain extent with their second-year pro Grady Dick out of Kansas. Now, he struggled mightily against Detroit. I think he went 1 for 11, had some open looks. But you have to he is a guy who forces you to game plan for him. They're on the radar. Cade Cunningham's always going to be on teams' radar. But Malik Beasley has heightened what other teams are going to have to do against Detroit because of their three-point shooting. They're not going to make 17 threes every game. No flipping way. That's just not possible. But the threat of Beasley from 3, hopefully Jaden Ivey, and he had 4 triples the other night. And when Tim Hardaway comes back and he's healthy, and I don't know what this does to that. I don't know if Hardaway now comes off the bench and they keep Beasley in there or vice versa. But either way, you're going to have 3-point shooting out there on the floor, threatening the opposition's defense. And it's been fun to watch. They're actually a pretty entertaining team to watch. Let me get to some texts. You can text us at Sports Radio to 21,000. Fire away.
This one is fun for me because I have family from Pittsburgh that listen to the show. It says, Overreaction Monday. Steelers have the 1 seed and play Detroit in the Super Bowl. What do you think, Shep?
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. That's just my opinion. I think, and I've said this, Mike Tomlin, I think, is in the conversation for Coach of the Year. It's amazing what he's done. His defense is really good. I mean, how Baltimore didn't want to, give the offer to Patrick Queen, I have no idea. I mean, he was great again yesterday. I felt that Baltimore is slightly overrated. I mean, there is some Zay Flower drops that surprised me.
One in a really big spot, too.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson's a threat, but Pittsburgh seems to know exactly how to play him. I give him a ton of credit. I don't think they're as good as Buffalo. I still don't think they're as good as Kansas City. but I give them a massive amount of credit. First of all, I loved their draft. I loved Pittsburgh's draft more than any other team's draft in the National Football League. Frazier's been awesome. Wilson's been awesome. Wilson was an incredible interception yesterday. But, they're hanging their hat on defense. I look at their points for, and it's a bit of a struggle for them right now. And I think that's a bit of a problem. But, look, they've won 5 straight. You can't doubt them. And they are, third in the league? Third in the AFC anyway, in points for, points against differential. The only teams better, Buffalo, and ironically enough, the Chargers. Like the Chargers have a better point differential than Kansas City, believe it or not. Nobody is close to what the Lions are doing. The Lions are a plus 159 in point differential.
Can I give the stat one more time? Because I just think it's unbelievable. And if people didn't hear it earlier, the Lions in their last 90 minutes, their last 3 halves, you go back to the second half against Houston and obviously yesterday's game against Jacksonville, they are outscoring opponents 71-6. 71-6 advantage Dan Campbell's Lions.
Yeah, that's, obviously people will look at Jacksonville and go, hey, look, a team that's lost 4 in a row, they're minus 100 plus in their point differential. Look at it, take it back to Tennessee, because Tennessee's got a better defense than Jacksonville. Tennessee scored 14 points. So look at that. Houston sure scored, what'd they score, 21, 20?
23, 26.
23
I think the Lions
in the first
won that
half.
game. Yeah.
Look at the last 3 games and what Detroit has done. They outscore Tennessee 52-14. It was a late touchdown. All right. But still, that's a plus 38. You look at what Houston did. Sure. Okay. For an entire game. This is the NFL, man. And especially with Houston. I mean, you hold that team scoreless when they've got the weapons that they've got.
It's a good team.
It's a really good football team. I don't think they're a great team by any stretch.
But a division winner, probably.
What's that?
A division winner, probably.
Yeah,
right?
It's the weakest division in football, but somebody's got to win it, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah. No, you're right. They're going to be a division winner. People love – they should be Dallas tonight, you would guess. People love their quarterback. They love C.J. Stroud. He's come back down to earth a little bit. Look at the last 3 games. It's been a dominating performance. Somebody tweeted this out yesterday. The Lions, I'm summarizing here, you're relaxed when you watch them, right? Is there a time where you feel, holy crap, this one could get away? Even against Houston, they get the key turnover to start the third quarter. Was there ever a time where you're like, it's not happening?
No, I talked to some people that went to bed at halftime because it's a late game. I think it's only because it was a late game. But I think everyone
game, dude.
They didn't necessarily go to bed thinking the Lions had no chance. To your point, I think it's like everyone kind of hung in there. Like, dude, the Texans aren't doing anything with the ball in the second half here. If the Lions could just stay with this and keep rolling with the punches, which they did, eventually the better team wins the game.
Yeah, there's so many times where you've watched the Lions and doubt has crept into your mind. There's so many times where you think, okay, this is where they showcase who they truly are. And you think of it in a negative term. Now you think of it as a positive. Let's see who we're going to see who they really are. And then they do that. And that stems from the confidence you have, not just in the players, but in the coaching staff as well. I mean, this team is so good and so complete, and yet they're not fully healthy. That should scare everybody else in the National Football League. When we come back, we've got our we've got the results from Friday's poll question. We've got the Daily Wager brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. And at 8:18, we give you our hero and heels. Who is yours? Let us know on X's and Bros.
The Freddy the Pizza Man Foundation is dedicated to providing support to families.
Get some facts and come back and see me. Get some facts and come back and see me. Don't throw out salaries or other things. Get some facts and come back and see me.
You can't handle the truth. I told our players, you need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. Be a dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
We weren't good. There's no sense asking me things about the game. I'm telling you, we laid an egg, so I'm not going to break it down for you. We sucked. We sucked. We laid an egg. That's all I have to say, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not going to break it down for you. Nothing went well for us. It's on us. We have to figure it out, and we will.
It's showtime.
All right, final hour of the program. Glad you're with us on this Monday after another Lions win, another Pistons victory. Let's hope we can say the same after the Red Wings play out west again tonight. And we look forward to your conversation via the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. Or you can text our program, Sports Radio, to 21,000. If you can't listen to it on any of these great affiliates throughout the great state of Michigan, you can always go to MichiganSportsNetwork.com. I'm Matt Shepard. Trent Bally is our producer. We're live on StreamYard. You can check us out live on Twitter or X, whatever you want to refer to it as, at XB Mornings. Or you can follow us on StreamYard and watch us on StreamYard at Facebook and at YouTube. Just go to X's and BrO's. Every 8 o'clock hour, we give you a poll question result from the poll question the previous day, or in this case, on Friday. And we give you our daily wager, brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort and their sportsbook, Ascend, right there in the corner. You can check it out. It is a phenomenal place to watch football or any type of sporting event. Friday's poll question, best athlete in Detroit right now. We're not talking about Al Kaline and Gordie Howe and Isaiah Thomas and Barry Sanders or Billy Sims. We're talking about right now. Here were the choices. Cade Cunningham, Penei Sewell, Tarek Skubal, or other. Apparently, we could not represent the Red Wings in this poll question and figure out whether or not a guy like Dylan Larkin would be in that conversation. So these are the names. What is the final result?
This might surprise you, Shep. 51%.
Well, you know what? Here's what I wondered before you read the results.
Go ahead.
Immediately when you think best athlete, people will gravitate toward basketball. Penei Sewell, though, is considered, I would argue, the best at his position on the best team in their sport. So I don't think, and Tarek Skubal is going to win the Cy Young. So it's a really good tug of people's beliefs, and they probably
it comes down to what matters to you, what's your criteria, and I think that's what made this a fun question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, Shep, do you think of the best player on the best unit on the best team in football? That's Penei Sewell, and that's what 51% of people believe. Over half of our listeners, or those who voted at XB Mornings on X, said Penei Sewell's the best athlete in Detroit right now. And for the record, that was my vote. 40% said Tarek Skubal.
Wow.
Cade Cunningham, which is 4%. Other with 5%. And shout out to Josh for his little write-in. He says, other, Jared Goff. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, when people watch Jared Goff I don't think they believe he's the best athlete. See, this is the beauty of this question. It really is. One, none of these guys can skate. And if you think athleticism is required in skating, you're right. So that's why you could consider other for a guy on the Red Wings. Skubal's the best pitcher in baseball. But if you've ever seen him swing a bat, you would never consider him athletic. I'm not saying he's not, because he is. But that's part of athleticism, right? So you figure he could throw a football, absolutely. He can throw a baseball as well as anybody in the sport. But what about, his ability to swing a bat? That requires something, doesn't it? I mean, Riley Green can throw. He can swing. He can run, not beautifully, right? Parker Meadows, who's a better runner? He can throw and he can hit, right? Penei Sewell is a big man. that dude can shoot a basketball. That dude is strong. He's fast. He's quick. It's beautiful. And Cade Cunningham is silky smooth on the floor. Have you ever seen him throw a first pitch baseball? So that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, the beauty is what you consider to be athletic. Who's the guy who's all around? I used to say this all the time about Wayne Gretzky. I thought he was one of the best athletes in the world by far, because Wayne Gretzky, when he was a kid, he was a really good baseball player. He's a hell of a lacrosse player, and he plays hockey, right? I don't know what he was like in basketball. He's a pretty damn good golfer, too. Michael Jordan was widely considered the best athlete, for sure. And you could understand because of how athletic he was on the basketball floor. People said he could play baseball. Quite honestly, I didn't see it, at least not at a major league level. But he was good enough to reach the major leagues. Wink, wink, like that wasn't a marketing stunt. My guess is he could play football. We know what kind of golfer he is. He loves to play golf, and he's a pretty good, damn good golfer too. You think he can skate? Nope. I mean, that's part of being athletic, I believe. So it's a fine line between all these different options, and that's what I loved about the question. Our poll question that will be answered tomorrow: who's the best team in the AFC? Is it Kansas City, Buffalo, or Pittsburgh? All right, time to get to our daily wager. It is brought to you by our friends at Ascend. You see it right up there in the corner. Ascend, the sportsbook at Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. Great food, outstanding opportunity to watch so many different games. Like tonight, you get a chance to watch the Monday Night Football game, and that Monday Night Football game is the Battle of Texas, Houston, and Dallas. You can be watching the Pistons and the Bulls, and later on, you can watch the Red Wings and the San Jose Sharks. All there at Ascend. Grab a pillow, grab a blanket, have your favorite beverage, really good food, and enjoy it at Ascend. What was the daily wager on Friday, and how'd you do?
On Friday, I had the over for the points total in Pistons Raptors, and Shep, you were on the call there. The over did not hit. That was a defensive performance, and in the fourth quarter, the Pistons defense really stood up. The over did not hit. So we're going to come back with a vengeance today on Monday with the daily wager, Shep. I've got Jalen Duren tonight. I've got his over 23.5 points and rebounds. He has to give me a fairly decent, fairly impressive double-double for that to hit. 14 points, 10 rebounds, we win our bet. Pistons, of course, have the Bulls at home. They're going for, what would this be, a third straight win, fourth straight win?
Third straight.
Third. And it would move them to 8-8 on the season. They are 4-point favorites, but I didn't want to touch that spread because whenever you play the Bulls, you got a rivalry, or I use that term a little somewhat loosely. Yeah. But, I don't want to – Pistons could win by 2, and I'll be happy.
He could score 20 points and grab 4 rebounds, and you'd win.
Yes.
It's just a combination.
Combination of 23.5 points and rebounds. Yep.
Okay.
Got the over.
All right. So, and Jalen Duren, that's an interesting bet. My hope is that he gets a lot of rebounds for you.
I think he's a lot more athletic than Nikola Vucevic is for the Bulls. And that's kind of my line of thinking here.
Because he was pretty good last night. He had a double-double, but it was 11 points and 10 rebounds.
Correct. So that would have gone
The
under.
hard part for Jalen Duren is he's not a high-volume shooter. He doesn't shoot anything from outside of 5 feet. I think he's made 2 field goals all year long outside of 5 feet. Okay? And so he's a putback guy. He's a lob guy.
Pick and roll.
He's a guy in the basket, inside the lane, in tight. And that doesn't always happen easily because especially in today's game. So I'll give you an example. The starters yesterday, Harris had 11 field goal attempts, Cunningham 15, Ivy 19, Beasley 16, Duren 8. You're going to need some rebounds there if you want to match that. But the beauty of the daily wager is, Trent has always reminded us, you can always vote against it. You can always go the opposite way.
Go the other way.
And feel free of going the other way. All right, when we come back, we give our hero and heels. We like this segment every Monday, the champion from the weekend and the person who was not so great over the weekend. We'll take your phone calls and or your texts on it when we come back on X's and Bros.
Rake in the riches every Saturday in November with the Fall Harvest.
I'm not going to lie. I love this Monday segment. Heroes and heels. The hero from the weekend, the heel from the weekend. You can give it to us. Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. There's usually multiple options. There are for me. We don't always get this in this segment, and oftentimes it carries over because there are so many. The thing I was thinking about the other day, Grand Valley. You talk about resiliency, right? It's really important. Ferris State has shown resiliency. They lost early in the season. They bounced back. They beat Grand Valley, their rival. They're now a 1 seed in the Division II playoffs. Grand Valley is a 2 seed, and Grand Valley is going to open up with a game against University of Indianapolis, which is kind of exciting because they've had some good success there. They have been able to bounce back after the loss to Ferris State. It was a home loss, but they make their 24th playoff appearance all time. They are 39-18. They're the winningest Division II program in Division II history. They got 4 national championships. In the playoffs since 2001, they're 39 up, 13 down. This Lakers senior class making its 4th NCAA playoff appearance. They are 43-6 overall, these seniors. It's incredible. So it'll be the 25th all-time meeting against the nickname is called the Greyhounds of Indianapolis. And really excited for Grand Valley to take flight. So good luck to that entire coaching staff and all those players. And our hope is that, we can visit with Grand Valley's sideline boss coming up here real soon. And same with Ferris State. They are the 1 seed. You could see a rematch of these two teams. Wouldn't that be special? It wouldn't be the anchor bone on the line, but it would be a rematch after Ferris State beat Grand Valley when Grand Valley was ranked number 1, 34-7 earlier this year. So really excited for those two programs. Hats off to them. The hero could easily be, the Lions. It's not just the offense. And we've given you all the numbers. Goff throws 412, 4 scores, perfect passer rating. Montgomery and Gibbs, 3 TDs combined. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams each with season high in numbers. The 644 yards, the largest. The 46-point margin, the largest in franchise history. They've won 9 of 10 for the first time since 34. The defense allows just 41 rushing yards, 170 total yards, 10 first downs, forced another turnover. Complete game win, right? Easy to pick that. It's too obvious for me. Here's my hero. My hero is Sienna DeCambra. Have you heard of her?
No, enlighten me.
She's a senior volleyball player for Louisiana. At the start of the season, she was out with an ACL and meniscus injury in the preseason. She tore them both. People said she's not coming back. This is how her career ends as a volleyball player. And what she did over the weekend against Georgia Southern is she came onto the floor for the final point, and she served an ace. It was the only time she's played this year.
That's badass.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
kind of emotional. It was senior day. It was the final point in the final game, and she serves up an ace. She was wearing a heavy brace on her right leg, and the entire bench, this is why you love sports. God, how much you love sports. How it brings people together, how it creates an emotional bond that you will never, ever forget, and how you will be connected forever. She serves the ace. The entire bench pours out onto the floor and hugs her, and she's bawling, just bawling. And I don't know how you can't get emotional about that if you have a pulse, right? But Sienna DeCambra is my hero of the weekend. Who's yours?
That is awesome. Mine is much more surface level in terms of what we talk about here. I've got Cade Cunningham. He got his 4th triple-double last night on the season, the 6th of his career. He passes Isaiah Thomas for triple-doubles in Pistons history. I know that Isaiah was a little bit smaller. Tough for Isaiah to get 10 rebounds in a game. But nonetheless, it's a milestone. He trails only Grant Hill in Pistons all-time triple-double history with 29. And the way he's been playing lately, he's got a great chance to surpass Grant Hill in that department. But most importantly, Shep, the Pistons are relevant again. They're close to 500. They're favored tonight at home against the Bulls, second game of a back-to-back, looking for a 3rd straight game. Cade Cunningham averaging 23 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists per game. He's on that all-star caliber track. And I just can't give him enough credit for. You can tell me, it's the Wizards they're beating or they're beating bad teams. They're beating the teams they should beat. They're doing what's expected of them. And Shep, most importantly to me, they're doing what you and I expected them to do, if not more. We wanted 30 wins this season. It looks like they might be on pace for close to 40. So Cade Cunningham deserves a hell of a lot of credit as the leader of this Pistons team that is back in the mix finally.
Yeah, I think he's elevated other players' games. I think that can be very superficial sometimes for us to say because a team is winning a little bit more than some people expected, and he is their best player, but it really rings true. Coaches will tell you this, and players will too, and he has, committed to this team with a long-term contract, but he's also, what I like about him is he's shown an awful lot of leadership too. And leadership can sometimes be overblown, and we seem to bring it up only when a team wins or when a team is really struggling for victories. When a team is struggling, we oftentimes think, man, where's the leadership? When a team is winning, wow, it's great leadership, right? Well, this team's about 500, and he's showing some leadership. The other night in Toronto, Ron Holland was pretty emotional. He was upset at something that took place, and he started to march back out on the floor, and Cade Cunningham kind of spun him around and pointed him back toward the bench and told him to sit down because the coaches are talking over strategy and, they're going to come up with something. The emotional part of things, and we all get emotional, right? It can be a very positive thing. But the emotional part of things sometimes have to be reeled in. And coaches can't always do it. I asked JB Bickerstaff the other day because the ideal thing, he said in his shoot-around, player-led team. The ideal thing for any team is to be player-led. You don't want the coach to be the leader. Coach mapping out the game plan, hoping you execute it, put players in the right position at the right time. The players have to lead. All right? That's the way it was with the Pistons bad boys. That's the way it was when they won championship in 2004. When the players take shape and take that message that the coaching staff has delivered and they implement it and they're forcing others to follow, then you've done something. And I asked JB Bickerstaff, how do you know when you have a young team, and Detroit has the 4th youngest team in the NBA, how do you know that you've become a player-led squad? And he's like, it's a good question. It's going to take some time because they're getting to know me. I'm getting to know them. They have to believe, they have to buy into what we are delivering, what we're coaching and preaching, and what we think is going to turn out to be a championship level team. They've got to buy in. Well, there is early buy-in, not that they're a championship team, but there's early buy-in that allows players to become a little bit more vocal. I noticed this at the shoot-around. Friday against Toronto. It was quick. It was concise. It was 42 minutes or so. Players are talking. They're helping each other. Different coaches' voices are out there. That's what you want in a basketball team. If it's just one voice, it's Charlie Brown's teacher. It's a bad sign. Other coaches have to be involved. Players have to be involved. Cade Cunningham has done that. When we come back, we'll get to our heels and yours if you want to participate in the text, Sports Radio to 21,000 or the Wire hotline 866-838-4843 on X's and Bros.
Discover fantastic holiday gift ideas at low prices this week at Meijer. Enjoy 20% off.
We know the NBA is finally back. We know the Pistons are on a 2-game mini roll. We know Cade Cunningham boasted his 4th triple-double of the year, 6th of his career already, and Detroit feels like they're playing good ball. A new season means you can get into the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. You know you can make a lot of bets in a lot of different places. But here's what DraftKings does better than anybody else. They give you the prop bets that are oftentimes really fun to follow. Cade Cunningham with a triple-double. Jalen Duren, a double-double. Malik Beasley, how many threes is he going to make? And they make it easy and they make it simple. And if you're a first-time user, they reward you. $5 bet, you get a $200 bonus bet at DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code HUGE. That's HUGE. And first-time customers bet $5. You get a $200 bonus bet when you bet just those $5. Only at DraftKings. The crown is yours. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, all you have to do is call 1-800-GAMBLER. Have to be 21 years or older. Michigan only. Eligibility restrictions do apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.com/bball today. It's been a dream season, hasn't it been?
Has it ever?
It's a great song. I remember when this song came out, the word was that David Lee Roth didn't like the song. And the reason he didn't like it was because Eddie Van Halen was playing the synthesizer. Remember, it's a 4-man band. You got Alex Van Halen on drums. You got Michael Anthony on bass. You got Eddie Van Halen lead guitarist. You got David Lee Roth, overrated, as the lead singer. And I say that from personal experience.
You had to get it in there, yeah.
Well, I saw him at Joe Louis Arena. He was so drunk. I mean, he just gave up on songs. It drove me crazy.
There's a lot of people that share that sentiment.
Yeah, I just, whatever. He was a showman. But I just didn't think he was very good live, unlike Sammy Hagar, who's got a great voice. It's not that I don't like Van Halen early. Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2, Women and Children First, Fair Warning. I like all those albums. It's just some of them, David Lee Roth is a little much for me sometimes. But whatever. He didn't like it because he said nobody wants to see the world's greatest guitarist playing, the keyboards. Because Eddie Van Halen, obviously, in that song, is playing the keyboards and the lead guitar, the only guitar. And it turned out to be one of the best hits they've ever had. Now that is, unfortunately, with Sammy Hagar, that song right there, because that's Dreams. So that's with Sammy Hagar. But when Eddie Van Halen played that stuff early on, like off the Diver Down album, for example, or off 1984, where he's using the synthesizer, that's when David Lee Roth had the problems. Not necessarily on that song, but when Eddie Van Halen used to play songs like that and came up with songs like that, where he was involved in synthesizer as well as lead guitar. All right, well, let's get to the heels. That's a long-winded way of talking about music. We do our heroes and heels at 8:18. Here's the heel. You hear the disturbing music in the background? That's what it's about. For me, it's the Chicago Bears and their head coach, Matt Eberflus. Chicago trailed the Packers at Soldier Field 20-19. They moved the ball to the Green Bay 28-yard line with 35 seconds left. They've got a timeout remaining. What do you do there? If you're the head coach, what do? You've got one timeout. Are you taking a shot? People always say, if you throw the football, too many bad things can happen. You can throw it in, you can throw an interception, you can get sacked. Well, if you run the football, you can get a loss of yardage or you can fumble. I mean, those things are possible if you're doing something other than throwing it. I'm not
but
saying
the important piece of it is they had the timeout. I think that's what you're getting at here. Is
but you're saving the timeout for the field goal. Everybody and their brother. Green Bay had, it seemed like 11 guys in the box. Tackle to tackle is the box. It seemed like everybody defensive. They were just expecting them to run. And what did Chicago do? They just ran it. So rather than trying to run something that gives them better field goal position, you don't run an end around where you can take a loss. I'm not suggesting you go downfield, but it wouldn't be bad to do a play action boot with a quarterback who's got pretty good wheels and give him an opportunity to, maybe throw a safe pass and out pattern. Maybe you just don't trust him. Okay. Here's what he did. They ran the ball. They got 2 yards. And then they let the clock tick all the way down to 4 seconds. It's this, not as much the play call. It's this. You got a chance to run it again, right? Why would you let the clock run all the way down to 4 seconds? You got the timeout. You run it straight ahead. Take your time. You still have 16 seconds. Run another play. Even if it's right up the middle. What if you get a couple more yards? What if you break one and you pick up 5 yards? Timeout. Then you get the field goal. What do? Carlos Santos comes in, attempts a 46-yard game winner, well within his range, so it shouldn't be an issue, but it was blocked. Packers celebrate their 11th straight win in the series, the longest streak for either team in the history of that series. Chicago, which had won 3 in a row to reach 4-2, now they've lost 4 straight, and they're below the break even. Matt Eberflus is going to take the blame for this because of clock management down the stretch. Really, it should be the players up front who didn't do their job in blocking, but it all falls at the feet of the head coach. We know that. And in this case, it's the reason they're my heel. Who do you got?
Good call, Shep. That was my heel last week. And as much as I wanted to go Aaron Rodgers and the Jets for that brilliant text that you sent me, that stat about the
that
winning
would be
percentage.
The second time you've done that, though. You can't. We try not to
no
repeat.
Repeats. Right.
We try not to repeat hero or heel for the weekend.
Yes, exactly. So I went in a different direction. The Cincinnati Bengals, Shep, they've got the number 1 passing offense. They've got the number 27 rushing offense. And you look back on that Joe Mixon trade because they didn't want to pay him money. They know they're going to have to pay Chase. They're paying Burrow all this money. Now they got a decision to make with T. Higgins. It looks like they're not going to be able to keep him. They thought that trading away Joe Mixon would be their best way forward. And here you sit with 7 losses after last night's loss to the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. You simply look at the AFC. Obviously, you've got the Chiefs, you've got the Chargers, you've got the Bills, you've got the Steelers in your own division, the Ravens in your own division. The Texans are going to win their division by default, it looks like. The Colts are getting back to 500. They've got Anthony Richardson. I'm just saying, there are plenty of teams that are more suited to make the playoffs now than your team is. And Shep, I got to give credit to my big brother because we were talking about this last night watching this game. It just kind of feels like Matthew Stafford's Lions with this team. You've got a quarterback playing out of his mind. He's playing great. He's making winning plays, the occasional mistake. But the running offense, is non-existent. And the defense is just kind of bad. And a lot of boneheaded penalties and just weird stuff. And all of a sudden, a team that the Bengals became a team, Shep, a couple of years ago that we just talk about because they went to the Super Bowl. The year they went to the Super Bowl, they were 10-7. They weren't necessarily a great team that year either.
Yeah.
So I just
What about Kansas City last year? They won it. They won 11 games.
Yes, but they had already won 2, so it felt a little different. The Bengals kind of burst onto the scene. They make that run. I know every team's different, but I'm just saying we're now 3 years removed from it, and I just want people to actually realize, look at this objectively. Are the Bengals a great team? Hell no. Are they objectively an even good team? I don't know because they're 4 games,
but
3 games under 500 now.
You're blaming the rushing offense, which I get it, but they are 6th in scoring overall, whether they're bad rushing or not. How about their defense?
Sure, I brought that up. It's a bad defense.
Like if you want to complain about Cincy, I totally get it. I agree with you. Would it surprise you to say that their rushing offense is ranked higher than their scoring defense is? Because that's the case.
And Shep, that's a good point. And I guess that plays to the bigger picture here, which is just the Bengals just aren't that good. And we talked about them coming into the season. Like I think you and I, did we pick them to win that division? Or did we pick the Ravens? I forget.
I picked the Ravens.
But nonetheless, we said that it would be the toughest division in football, and it hasn't been that. Largely because the Bengals have not nearly lived up to those expectations. And that's, I think it deserves to be talked about a little more.
I think you could argue they're the most, outside of maybe Dallas, they're the most disappointing team in the National Football League.
I would agree with you.
I
the Jets.
But I would also remind you that Joe Burrow leads the league in passing yards. He's got 27 touchdowns, which leads the league, and he only has 4 picks. He's also been sacked 26 times. Now, that's not Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has been sacked 41 times. I don't know how many is all on him. But Burrow, he's ranked in the top 10 in number of times he's been sacked. I don't think it's necessarily on him unless the Cincy coaches are seeing something in their film breakdown where he's more at fault for some of the sacks. And you're right. The rushing offense sure isn't what it once was, but their defense is what you would think you'd be focused on, considering how many points per game they allow.
No, it is. I'm giving Burrow credit. That's why my heel is the Bengals. It's not Joe Burrow. It's the Bengals. And that's why I brought up the Matthew Stafford Lions comparison. I know Stafford never had these types of numbers when the team was that bad, but it was the same principle of, look, your quarterback's out there. He's a gamer. He's a gunslinger. He's playing well. And yet the team can't win because the offensive line stinks, or there's coaching errors, or there's penalties, or you can't run the ball. So ultimately, at this point in the season, Shep, you and I know this. You are what your record says you are. You're 4-7. You're a team that's 3 games below 500, and there were really, really smart people out there that, despite trading Joe Mixon away, were picking the Bengals to go to the Super Bowl. So that's all I'm saying.
How much of a factor do you think Joe Mixon would be? I don't know the answer to this. He's 16th in the league in rushing yards, for what that's worth. Chase Brown is just 2 spots behind him. How much do you think he would matter if he were in that lineup?
It's a good question, and it's a hypothetical that we will never know the answer to, but I guess you and I talked earlier in the show about Houston's wide receiver room. Houston is more of a going down the field type of team. I wonder if Joe Mixon was in a more run-centric offense, if he would be better than 16th rushing in the league. And then also, I have to imagine that, and I'm not asking for you to be the best rushing attack in the league, because we know that's the Lions, but if Joe Mixon was still a Cincinnati Bengal, could they be 15th, 14th in the league? Average? Not 27th. They're a bad rushing football team.
Yeah.
In a very good, strong defensive division, and that's just not a good recipe.
Agreed. But they're a really bad defensive team too. And that's the thing that, that's why you say the Bengals in general. You're not saying just one aspect.
No. And Burrow's been great. We said earlier, and I completely agree.
Yeah,
he'd be the MVP front runner if they actually had a decent record. They don't.
Yeah, he's been really good. Philly and Baltimore, just so people are aware, Philly's number 1 in rushing. Baltimore's number 2, then the Lions. So Philly, that's why I've said earlier, when we talk about the teams that are really good and who can challenge Detroit, I think there's one team. It's one team and one team alone. It's Philadelphia. And that's because they have that balance and because they're really good at running the football. Detroit's really good too. Nobody's got the balance that Detroit does. And I don't think Detroit has a weakness. I think Philly does have some, but they're gifted as wide receivers, right? They're gifted at the tailback position, and they're gifted at the quarterback position. Not enough people gave them credit at the beginning of the year. I picked Philly to win the division, but they've been really impressive so far. All right, before we go, I wanted to bring this up. So much is made of free agency in baseball right now. So many people want to spend money of the Tigers and bring in people they think are going to help this team. I read an article over the weekend that indicated the free agents that you should pass on and the free agents you should invest in. Now, I take it with a grain of salt. And the reason I say that is because one of the players they have to invest in is Spencer Turnbull. And if I sure as hell wouldn't do that if I were the Tigers. And it's not as much as his ability as it is the fit. But one of the players to be wary of, they list 3. One is Carlos Estevez, a right-handed pitcher. One is Justin Turner. He's a little bit older. And the other is a guy many Tigers fans have been wanting all year long. And it's Pete Alonso. And here's what they say. The projected contract is 6 years, $159 million. So I know what you're thinking right now. You're trying to add that in. You're going, how much money? Just the player itself. And it's not that I don't like the player because he's had some incredible moments. He turns 30 next month. ESPN says he's coming off the worst power season of his career and has essentially never been a clear positive on the base paths. We know that, or defensively. So you're hoping to sign a guy strictly for one aspect and one aspect alone, and that's his offense, but specifically his power. And he's coming off his poorest power season for Alonso. And it says, given the history of production, I could justify paying something in the $100 million to $110 million range if I stretch. But signs point to the back end of any 9-figure deal potentially looking very bad for the team that signs him. If I were a GM, I just think I could spend my free agent dollars better than this kind of investment in Alonso alone, such as by getting Christian Walker, who I've loved out of Arizona, for less than half of what Alonso will be looking for guaranteed, and spreading the rest of that money around for names and sections I need. Plus, Walker's a better defensive first baseman by far than Pete Alonso. I'm not going to sit here and preach to you that you can't go after Pete Alonso and so on and so forth. But when free agency struck, if you recall, when people were saying, this is the guy you got to have, and they wanted to build the entire roster, starting lineup anyway, with free agents. And I'm telling you over and over and over again, I kept saying, look, age and length of contract. How long do you want to sign a 30-year-old? You had a problem with Javier Baez, different player, I understand, better production and more consistent. But you were tired. You didn't want a long-term deal for Javier Baez at least 2 or 3 years in. You did when he was first out there. How it affects you going down the road is really hard. And you don't want to be handcuffed like they have been in the past. Deals like this for 30-year-olds are really tricky. And it's another example of why those of you who have this pie in the sky idea that he's the guy to come in and take the place of Spencer Torkelson and fit this team and do exactly what it needs. He didn't do it for the Mets this past year from a power standpoint. And Detroit is, you don't want to be stuck in that type of financial purgatory at the end of his contract. If you're on the verge of winning it all, maybe you could see it because you're willing to say, all right, I spent the money, I got the championship, and now I'm done. I can live with it, right? People have said that in numerous teams. Is he putting you over the top? Is Pete Alonso the guy who's putting you over the top? And
not
are you
over
willing
the top.
to say, listen, here's what's going to happen. In 3 years, let's just say 3 years, do you think you're going to be happy with that contract?
No.
When he's 33? You're not. These are the pitfalls of free agency. Immediately, people go right to the free agent pool and say, this is how we get better. It's not the only way you get better. You want a guy who has done it before and brings some professionalism and production to your lineup and can do it in a short-term basis. That's the reason I said Teoscar Hernandez. 2-year deal. You're not handcuffed down the road, not necessarily blocking things for young guys. He would be a really good fit for this team as a right-handed power hitter. All right, we got to get out of here. Our thanks to Trent Bally as our producer. Thanks to you for your texts. We appreciate it as always. We'll be back with you tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, here on X's and Bros across the great state of Michigan on the Michigan Sports Network.